Hey, this is Joshua, and this is the third episode of Stretch with Joshua. And today I want to talk a little bit about what PNF is and what natural resistance is and why PNF works. So, this is going to be interesting. This is kind of a topic that I discovered while stretching people kind of in the field, just observing and learning, and it's probably some interesting stuff. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell, and then it'll notify you whenever a new video comes out. So, what is PNF, first of all? PNF in stretching context is proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. And it's a lot simpler than it sounds. When you're stretching, like let's say I'm stretching backward like this, if I create some resistance here and I press against that and then I release, it activates the muscle that's being stretched, and it it creates an awareness inside of that muscle that wasn't previously there, which actually allows the muscle, or it can allow the muscle to more deeply relax than it has before. If you haven't watched my video about proprioceptive awareness, I definitely recommend watching that because that kind of explains that feature more in depth. However, I'm going to go into the PNF a little more in detail right now. So when we're at the limits of how much we're able to, we're at the limits of a range of motion, how much we're able to move an appendage, we get to what I would consider to be trauma, the habitual tension that's stored in the muscles in the body is unprocessed emotional energy. It's based on some kind of habitual clenching that we have some kind of experience around, some kind of story that caused us to be in fight or flight. If you think about fight or flight, it is running away from danger or running toward danger. But either way, it's associated with some kind of movement. Whereas, like, fight, flight, or flee or freeze, freeze is kind of takes that fight or flight impulse and then freezes it. So the energy is still there. It's just getting stuck in the muscles. So what we're doing with stretching and trauma release and tapping into this energetic tension in the muscles, what we're doing is we're taking that freeze response, which is what the latest stage is of the hardened muscle, and we're releasing whatever might be in there. And so the fight or flight response is sort of deeper than the freeze response. And so as you unfreeze a muscle, it can start to quiver, it can start to shake, and even like push back naturally. So this is interesting because, as I demonstrated with the PNF resistance, the body has its own natural PNF that happens as you follow the way that the muscle is sort of wound up. So, for example, if this is the range of my arm, and I'm moving it inside of the tension here. So I find the tension of the range of motion, and then I move, maintaining that tension. I kind of surf that tension along the range of motion. And as I'm doing that, the muscle will actually send out pulsations. And these pulsations are releases of energy. And these this energy, when it's stored, this is exactly what keeps us from being flexible. And so by tapping into and assisting the release of those energies, the muscle automatically becomes more flexible. Now, isn't that interesting? It's not so obvious looking at, oh, I need to stretch, I need to get more flexible. It's actually, we have to give the body space and time to release these natural pulsations. So, what happens when the body is not releasing natural pulsations is very interesting. One thing I'll sidetrack and say, when I work with people, when I'm stretching people, people who are much more, let's say, distant or hands off, or how do I say it? Like toughened personalities, people who are not as receptive as a personality, they're not as receptive to a stretch, and so they tend to have more of a fight, right? And then somebody who is more receptive and more open emotionally to a stretch, the more I notice that they're also receptive to that process. And so uh, it's funny to put this into words because it's this energetic experience that I've noticed several times. Basically, the body has to go through these pulsations of like pushing back, and if it's allowed to push back, then it's able to relax. And so when we activate the PNF, we are sort of uh, synthetically giving it this pulsation to wake up the muscle. And like I was saying, people who are more receptive don't need to do it synthetically because they're kind of open to their natural pulsations of their muscle. People who are more toughened and more, let's say, skeptical or reserved, people who are more closed off, it requires more of that synthetic uh, pulsation, that synthetic resistance and flexing of the muscle to deliver a connection of that will, right? We're like reclaiming stuck will in our muscles because that's what makes the muscle habitually tight. You could also call this shadow will, trauma, or just an accumulation of energy. So I find this extremely interesting because these these pushbacks, these pulsations are, um, let's say when we're kids and we're not allowed to push back and our voice has been suppressed maybe by family or teachers or whatever, we have suppressed our own fight. And so by getting energy into these muscles again, by allowing these muscles to have a little bit of fight, it actually allows them to relax. And this is sort of counterintuitive, because people try to initiate relaxation, go straight into relaxation. But this nuance is really key in stretching, giving the muscle a chance to quiver, to wake up. It also reminds me of like when an animal is running from uh, like when a prey is running from a predator, and the prey escapes, and then they vibrate, right? So it's that quivering, um, that that is really the muscle waking up and releasing that energy. So if you're working with PNF, I really encourage you to try and find the body's natural PNF as a first step, and then the synthetic, like instructional, resist me now. If, in assisted stretching, I'm talking about if somebody has to resist the person that's stretching them momentarily. I do like a resist me for 3, 2, 1, and release, right? So this formula works, but it should be a secondary formula to tapping into the body's natural PNF. I'm getting tired, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and go to bed now. But thanks for watching, and looking forward to the next video at Stretch with Joshua. Okay, bye-bye.